Okay, so live streaming. We're live streaming. I've got the blind open behind me, so let me know if it's too bright. I've got some lights, new lights, but I'm only using the webcam today. I'm not using the fancy camera. Gonna try a more minimal setup. Bit easier to tear it down afterwards. So this week, or for this hour. This week I'm going to be looking at Azure Kubernetes Service, so that's our managed Kubernetes instance, and deploying Apache Ignite to that. So earlier this week I published a blog post to lightconsole.dev which focuses on some of the things I'm using within Apache Ignite in order to build my lighting control system. In fact, why don't we have a look at that? So I'll bring it up on the screen once it's loaded. Super duper. So here's the blog. If we go to, not about, here we go, the blog, we have this post which is distributed DMX with Apache Ignite. We also published it to Dev2, which is a really popular blog for developers. I guess if I search Apache Ignite, I'll probably find it on here. Apache Ignite. There we go. So you can find it in both places. If you like it, give it a heart, or you might want to bookmark it or tweet about it. But this is a kind of not in-depth, high level. It's a high level overview of my architecture and some snippets of code that kind of show how things are working within my distributed system. But that's all working locally, right? That's on my LAN. That isn't running in the cloud. It's not using any cloud infrastructure. And obviously I'm a cloud advocate. My job is to talk about the cloud. So I wanted to take a look at how do I deploy Apache Ignite into the cloud, and how do I best make use of Apache Ignite within Azure. And I was looking through the documentation because when we want to learn things, we always go to docs. It's always the first place, be it the Microsoft docs for Azure or .NET or the Apache Ignite documentation. Or we could just, sit there and try and work it out ourselves, and it would take forever. So I'm a big fan of sitting down and just reading through documentation and going through tutorials and trying to find the pain points and where things just don't quite work as you'd expect them to. And so that's what I've got planned for this session. So we're going to deploy some cluster or a cluster, and we're going to just see what the pain points are, see if it works to start with. Fingers crossed it will. There's a few notes I made earlier because I fiddled around with this stuff. I'm no AKS expert. For the most part, I think it's over-engineered. In fact, for most projects, I would say for most projects it's over-engineering. I read a brilliant article yesterday that was shared by a colleague, which was saying that if you're using K8 Kubernetes, then you've got 8 problems, and how most developers and most projects don't actually need this kind of infrastructure. But nonetheless, we're gonna play around and we're gonna see what we can do. So as usual, I'm drinking my tiny little cups of coffee to keep me going, to keep me energized. And yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Let's have looking at my lovely face, beautifully lit. Let's look at the screen, and I'll go and sit down in the corner, whichever corner that is. Oh, look at that! It's like Inception. So I've got the documentation here. I'll put a link to this in the description. It's using 2.7.6. Now they actually released. I don't know if it was stable. Let's have a look. I added it to my project this morning. Manage NuGet. Oh, I've already got it. 2.8.0. So the docs, they need updating, but the docs are still relevant for what we're doing. And I kind of changed the last step here, which is connecting external applications. In this case, they're using some Java stuff. I'm not a Java developer. I find Java a bit confusing, to be honest. I almost always have some kind of error. I've got it working on this machine, so I don't want to play around with it too much. So we'll go with the .NET client, which is pure .NET. There's no Java dependencies, and we'll test if we can connect up to this remote cluster and throw some data in and then get some data back out of it. So I guess first things first, we need to deploy AKS into, I'm using the preview portal, whoopsie doodles. This is the internal portal. Let's go to the customer portal. Nope, I do not need recommendations right now. But what I do want to do is create a resource. Now I think I deployed a resource group earlier for testing this stuff. Let's have a look. Maybe I deleted it. Ignite. Let's do all of the subscriptions. Oh, that's going to bring back a load of there. I do have. There we go. Look, I've got a resource group ready and waiting for us to deploy into. So let's create a resource. We're going to do AKS, which is our Azure Kubernetes Service, and we're going to deploy this now. Because we're following the docs, let's actually look through the docs and see what it's suggesting. So it's got the resource group name. What else have we got? So we're using Ignite cluster as a name. We can do that as well. Ignite cluster. Ooh. I live in London, so obviously I want this to be in Europe somewhere. We'll go for UK South because that's pretty close. And we're going to go for 4 nodes. We could scale that up to be a lot of nodes, but we're just testing. So let's save some money for my boss. Let's not use up all of the budget because this is being charged in my case to the Azure internal consumption subscription. So what else have we got here? So resource group name, cluster name. And we need to pick the number of nodes. Yep, we've got that. Should we have a look at what possible options we have for the VM size? So we've got the DS2 V2, which is general purpose, kind of what we want. So 2 virtual CPUs. What is that? 7 gigs of RAM, 8 disks. I think I'm happy with that. It's not the cheapest. We'll have 4 of them, but it's fine. What else have we got? We'll pop over to networking, just double check that. That seems okay to me. So the documentation says, in our case, a cluster will consist of 4 nodes, each with 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. Next, navigate to networking configuration screen and set up the network the way you need. If there's no network specific parameters, then feel free to use the default settings as follows. Now that's interesting because we've obviously changed since this documentation was written the options here. We now have the load balancer, which is standard, but we also default to no rather than HTTP routing as yes. Now I'm going to leave that as a default, and we'll see if it still works, because it does say we can leave it as a default setting, so we'll roll with that. After that, go to monitoring configuration. Okay. It's suggested to have the monitoring enabled so that you can observe the state of the cluster from the Azure portal. So that's already enabled for us. Perfecto. I think we're almost good to go on that. On the next screen, it says tags. Now, we don't need to do any tags, so we're just going to go review and create. And double check that this is a sane deployment. There we go, validation passed. Success! Initializing deployment. Now this is potentially going to take a while. I've had this take up to, and my goodness do I hope it doesn't take this long, but I've had it take up to an hour and a half to deploy AKS before. I've also had it take just 5-10 minutes, so I'm hoping for the latter. If it's the former, it's going to be an extraordinarily dull stream, or we may have to postpone and come back. I wouldn't want that. So whilst that's deploying, let's quickly glance through what else we need to do. So once it's deployed, yeah, we're going to need some time. Go to the All Resources Ignite cluster and give Azure some time to deploy the cluster. Okay. And then we need to access the Kubernetes cluster. Now, let's let's preempt this. I want the Cloud Shell, because I'm not going to use my local PowerShell, because I'm actually, you may know this about me, you may not, I'm a former Mac user. It's here somewhere. Here it is. The only sticker, let's put this up, the only sticker is Meadow, which is an amazing piece of technology. IoT with .NET. But I just don't use the Mac anymore. I've got this beast of a PC and I absolutely love it. So yeah, I've been using a PC, but I haven't really got into PowerShell yet. And I know I can install Bash with the Windows Linux subsystem and all of that, but I haven't looked into it enough to really want to use it in a demo. So we're going to use the Cloud Shell, which allows me to take my existing knowledge of Bash, and I don't have to mess around with installing dependencies and stuff like that. So we'll be using this Cloud Shell instead of installing stuff locally. So we're waiting for the deployment. It's still underway, but we can already see that we're going to have to put in some commands. I quite like this documentation. It's by readme.io, which I've used before for a project, which is pretty nice. I especially like that you could version it and just select from a drop-down box which version you wanted to use. So here we go. We've got created. I think we're approaching completion of this deployment. I don't need no recommendations. Boom, boom. Okay, maybe whilst that's deploying, I'll walk through the blog post. So I'm not going to read it to you, although some people would quite like to listen to me just read to them. I've been told that some people like the way I talk. And when I hear that, I normally turn the accent up, like dial it up to 11. So the project is this lighting controller. I've talked about it before. There's blog posts. If you're interested in it, lightconsole.dev is the domain name. But I wanted to demonstrate how I'm using Apache Ignite main features. So the clustering, which we're going to be looking at today, the data storage, again, which is going to be included in today's session, and then things like affinity co-location. So I've got some compute actions, and I want to make sure that they're running on the device that actually has the data. So if we pop up here, we can see I've got loads of different, these are nodes effectively, or pods within AKS, instances of Apache Ignite. And when I save some data, it's going to distribute that data to particular nodes. And the co-location says that when I want to run some compute action on that data, make sure that that's executed on the node that owns the data, which is pretty damn nice. What that means is that I'm not going to have to serialize the object up, send it over the wire, and then deserialize it at the other end. And obviously that's fine if you're just doing, one or two pieces of data that are relatively small. But imagine you need to do that across a collection of 1,000 or 2,000 objects. It would actually be much better for the network if you just sent the compute action to the nodes instead, because it's more likely to be a much smaller packet. And I haven't put this in the blog post, it's for a follow-up talk for sure, but there are some things that you can do within .NET to make that even speedier, including implementing your own deserialization and serialization. Siri's got excited based on that. iSerialization. I've got Siri set as Australian because it just feels a bit more friendly. But no, thank you, mate. Hey! Deployment is complete. Right, let's go to resource. We're ready to go. What are we doing? We're deploying Apache Ignite to AKS. And it's in UK South. We're running 1.14.8. And our network type is basic. Basic network. Simple network for a simple man. Right, let's have a look. Access your Kubernetes cluster. Kubernetes dashboard is a simple tool to help That helps to monitor the deployment from a local machine or another environment. To start using the dashboard, you need to install the Azure CLI. No, I don't, because I've got it in the Cloud Shell. If I was doing this on my machine, I absolutely would, but I don't have to. So follow these instructions. Is that still a good link? Let's check that. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So that's going to help people there. If you don't have it, once the Azure CLI is installed, perform the steps below. First, get the credentials of your cluster by running the following command. That's AKS or Azure AZ, AKS get credentials, resource group, Ignite cluster. Now our resource group is called Ignite testing, so we'll have to change that. And then the name is Ignite cluster. Well, the name's the same, so let's we're going to write this stuff out manually. Now the reason I'm not going to copy and paste it, and you may be thinking, Mike, you're just wasting time here, is for me it's really important to build a muscle memory of this stuff. Just copying and pasting it is not going to solidify that knowledge in my brain, and that's why I'm doing this. It's to learn, to understand those pain points, and just merely copying and pasting doesn't do it for me. I've got to write it out by hand. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever had detention, like Bart Simpson writing out on the board in the opening credits. That repetition is about really reinforcing that knowledge. So we're going to do get credentials, resource group, Ignite testing in our case, name Ignite cluster, and we wait. Yes. Is it no, it's multiple things. Whew, that had me worried for a moment. I was like, is it just telling me the same thing over and over again? This is because I did this morning. I did a run through. Let's peel back the curtain and reveal the magic for what it is. It's a fraud. No, I ran through this morning just to find if it would actually work. So what I didn't want to do is end up... Last week we debugged for an hour, couldn't find the problem, got a burrito, found the problem straight away. I don't want to have that today, although I'd quite fancy a burrito. Maybe that could be my Friday lunch thing. A burrito for lunch. Oh man, I've got a big thing for Mexican food at the moment. Anyway, we've done that. Next, check that all the nodes are in the ready state with this command. So cube control get nodes. Now, if I ran this locally, I definitely don't have any of the Kubernetes CLI tools installed on my machine. I do have Azure CLI, but I don't have the cube control tool. So this wouldn't work on my local machine. So it's a good thing again that get nodes, that I'm using the Azure Cloud Shell. There we go. I was trying to wonder what is this called? What it is called that I'm looking at. 1, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful, and they're all ready, which is precisely what it's told us to check for. Excuse me, this coffee does make me gassy. I will try and keep them as quiet as possible. But nonetheless, I am human. Sometimes. Right. Finally launch the Kubernetes dashboard. Now this might not work, but we'll see. Kubernetes browse a resource group, and again, it's going to be Ignite testing, name Ignite cluster. Yes, cluster. So that's not the same, is it? So we got something slightly different. Now I googled this earlier and I was like, what is this? And not being a Kubernetes expert, I found this. Look at that. I use Notepad. I genuinely like Notepad. It's super fast for making notes. So let's append that to the end. And there we go. We're in. Now, we've got some errors, but we can see, you know, the dashboard. It's loaded something. Let's have a look at nodes. Oh, look, we've literally got nothing to display. So this step is actually wrong. this, if you were to follow this blindly, you'd possibly get here and go, it doesn't work. But let's continue, because I think that if we continue, we can make this work. So to deploy Ignite cluster within Azure Kubernetes Service, you need to perform at least 3 steps. Set up RBAC authorization, deploy Ignite service that is used for Ignite node auto discovery with Kubernetes, and that is also used as a load balancer for your external applications. Deploy Ignite cluster as a stateless or stateful solution. All the XAML files to perform these steps are provided for you on GitHub. Download these files to your Azure CLI shell. Okay. Let's load up those. So this is within the Apache Ignite GitHub repository. Okay, so if you want to do that, you're going to have to, I guess, clone this entire repository. It's not a small repo because it's actually the entirety of Apache Ignite. Or you could be an animal and just open them individually and copy and paste. I am not an animal. I cloned the entire thing earlier on this morning. And when I did that, I then came into the Azure Cloud Shell. It will be remembered at some point. And I uploaded the individual YAML files. You can see source, repos, Ignite, modules, Kubernetes, config, AZ, Azure. Yeah. So we want to upload those so we can upload our scripts. It's a nice little feature of the Cloud Shell. And then we can get access to those. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to open this in a new tab. Here we go, and we are connected. So we've done that. Let's start with the RBAC. You need RBAC authorization to create an Ignite specific namespace, service account, and role. Run the following commands in order, one by one. So the namespace creation. So we're going to do kube control create ignite namespace .yaml. And we've created the namespace. And now let's do the service account creation. So again, it's going to be kube control create f ignite service account .yaml. Hurrah. Oh, I love it when things work. Right. Continue role creation. Kube control create f ignite account role.yaml. And then lastly is the role binding. My goodness, my back feels so warm. It's almost like it's summer. Yesterday it was raining. It was horrible weather, and today I'm actually sweating. And it's not nerves, it's just warm. Kube control create f ignite role binding.yaml. There we go. Okay, that seems to have worked. Refer to the RBAC authorization guide for further details. Now, where's that pointing us to? So this points to another Apache Ignite doc. So actually, they've got an explanation of what the YAML here is doing, so that's quite useful. So if you want to dig more into what's happening there, you know where to go. Again, it's docs. When you have a question, where do I go? I go to docs. Right, so we've done that. Once RBAC is configured, open the Kubernetes dashboard, go to cluster roles to confirm that you have an Ignite specific role there. Okie dokie. Let's refresh. Oh, we still got some problems there. I don't see the namespace either. Right, let's yes, let's browse again, and we want a little piece on the end. He says, confidently but incorrectly, it would appear. Right. Why is that not working? Na 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 na. I do love a good problem. Now it says to listen, but that, I mean, that obviously is not going to work because that's a local address. And obviously on my home network, 127, well, that's home. That's me. It's not going to work. That's not going to work. Address already in use. Ha 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 ha. Let's remove ourselves. Let's close this puppy. Let's try again. When in doubt, try again. I think I need that. Yep. Oh, I think I'm going to have to close the... I really am getting toasty. The API... I mean, I thought we deployed the image. Let's have a look. Nodes. There's nothing to display here. Right. This is my backup. So, if I saw this... I'm closing the blind. I'm closing the blind. Not all the way, but just a tad. Right, so this was my backup. If I was having problems like this, I was going to run this. So let's take my backup command. Let's get out of there. Let's paste that puppy in. Let's go browse again. Reload. Whew. Aha! So I think that's going to become. Let's make a quick note on top. We'll do like comments. Let's ping Dennis to ask if I'm being an idiot or if we need this command to be added to the docs. I think that's reasonable. With that, we've now got something that looks a little bit more similar to, you know, earlier on with the nodes. So I think there's a step missing in this. And this is why I do this, right? This whole process of, we've got some documentation that shows how to do it. How well does someone that has absolutely no idea of this technology, how well can they be successful with it? I always joke that every team needs an idiot, and I'm more than happy to be any team's idiot if they need that, to just go through and idiot test it. You know, can I get it to work? Something that I have very little experience with. If I can, I would say that that's, you know, close to as idiot proof as you're going to get. And I have that itchiest bit between your nose and your lips. Ugh. There is a word for that, but I can't remember what it is. But it's extraordinarily itchy. Right, so we're closer. I can't really remember where we got to. Oh, we got there. We got there. Right, so we cluster roles. Do we see the namespace in there as well now? Woohoo, we do. Look at that. Ignite. Right, but we're not doing that. We're doing cluster roles. Here we go. Ah, that's cool. Roles, but not a sausage roll. Switch to the current namespace. Ignite. Okay. And the Kubernetes dashboard by selecting namespace. Ignite. Finally, switch the current namespace of your CLI collection. Connection by running the following command. Right, back to the Cloud Shell. We'll run it in this. Let's full screen. I want to leave that connected so that we can still just access this page when we want to without having to disconnect, because then we won't be able to tunnel in. Right, so we're going to do cube control config set context not pounds, cube control config current context, namespace equals ignite. That makes sense because our namespace is ignite. It's almost like this makes sense. It sounds like my girlfriend's very upset with a ready meal because I can hear her stabbing the top of it. Ignite service deployment. Deploy a special Ignite service that is used for Ignite nodes auto discovery, and the load balancer. So that's the cool thing about Ignite, is that when there's nodes running running locally on your LAN or maybe within your data center, as long as they can communicate with each other, and by default I think it's using multicast, so TCP/IP multicast, sending out some packets, then they'll auto discover each other. And this is going to work within our Kubernetes environment, because obviously each pod can communicate with each other. There are other options. So if you can't do multicast, you can implement your own discovery service. I think you just there's an interface on the .NET side of things that you can implement and provide as part of the configuration for your deployment. In fact, I should probably have a look into that, because I'd like to. I know that AWS have some support for Ignite, where you save a list of IP addresses into S3, and then Apache Ignite can use that to discover the other nodes. And I think we should probably have something similar within Azure. I think we should sort that out so that it's using Azure storage as well. I think that'd be quite an interesting project, especially getting a bit deeper into the Apache Ignite side of things. I'm just unsure whether or not, if I wanted to actually write that and give it back to the community, am I going to have to learn some Java, or can I do that in C# and it still be useful to people? I don't know. If it's Java, I may have to ask a colleague to help with that, because Java's just like C#. It's just you uppercase a few bits, but it's not really, is it? Anyway, right, what were we doing? Deploy special Ignite service. Did we get there? No, we didn't. We got here. So deploy a special Ignite service that is used for Ignite nodes auto discovery. Oh no, I've read that, but I haven't done it. Create Ignite service.yaml. So again, it's using that YAML file that I uploaded to the Azure Cloud Shell. Boom, it's done that. Refer to the Ignite service guide for further details. Does this link work? Yes, it does. The Ignite service, so it's giving you some examples of the YAML that's required, and a brief description. Oh, I love it. I love it when there's decent documentation like this. So we've run that puppy. Once a service is deployed, go to Discovery and Load Balancing Services to confirm that the service is observable. Okay, so Discovery Services. Yep, that's looking pretty damn good. Let's have a look in here. So I think I'm probably going to need the external endpoint here. I might just copy that now. I'll just do that. I'll do that. Boom. I've got it. And we're going to just pop it in here for use later. There we go. So Ignite stateful deployment. Ignite stateful deployment can be used to deploy Ignite as a memory-centric database with Ignite persistence enabled. Two options are available depending where you wish to store the write-ahead log, WAL. Separate disk for WAL, recommended, or the same storage for the database and write-ahead log files. So we'll do the recommended. So we need to run the following commands in order, one by one. Well, let's do that. So again, kube control, create ignite WAL storage class.yaml. Perfecto. Kube control, create ignite persistence storage class. I mean, I don't really want the well, it says to follow it one by one. Oh, yeah, I made a spelling mistake. Let's fix that. Stored edge. Hurrah! Again, kube control, create ignite stateful set. There we go. Same storage for blah blah blah. Go to cluster persistence volumes to see what type of drives were allocated for the cluster. For instance, this is how the screen might look. Stateful set deployment time. It might take a while for Microsoft Azure to allocate requested persistence volumes and as a result deploy all the pods successfully. While the volumes will be being assigned, okay, that could be worded slightly clearer. The deployment status of the pods might show a message like this: pod has unbounded persistent volume claims. Repeat 4 times. Right. Well, let's have a look at what was it telling us to do? Cluster persistence. Right, where's the cluster? Cluster. Persistence volumes. So we've got 2, and we're waiting for 4. Come on. So I guess we just have to wait for all 4 to have been deployed. Hopefully that's not going to take too long. Fingers crossed. But so far I'm pretty happy with this documentation. There's just been one thing that didn't quite work how I expected it to. And when I say expected it, as again, this isn't from any level of expertise. It's more just, what does the doc say? What actually happens? Is it fixable? And it was fixable with this command, which is doing a cluster role binding. So not hugely off in terms of usability. I'd say this is a pretty damn good piece of documentation. Now we literally just have to wait for Azure. I wonder if we can. I mean, we could probably run that, right? See what it says. Maybe. What's the next step? Workloads, pods. Should we have a look at pods? Ha. So this here is where it's saying the repeat 4 times that's mentioned here. Okay, I see. I was wondering where is that going to be saying that, because it's not saying it in the persistent volumes, which is where we were. Aha. We have 4. So this is what we actually wanted. Right, let's have a look at the pods then. Is that still there? Oh, that's still there. Container creating. Should I give it a minute? I mean, I'm very impatient. We have all 4. I only asked for 4. I only have, 4 pods. We'll carry on. You only live once. What's the worst that could happen? Scale SES Ignite replicas equals 4. Once the cluster is scaled and the disks are mounted to the pods, you'll be able to see a screen like this after navigating to workloads pods in the Kubernetes dashboard. Okay, looks quite pretty. That was a minute ago. How long do I need to wait? Oh, I'm super impatient. Did that do it? Did that actually run it? Yeah, so it's... I guess I should just wait for a moment, shouldn't I? I shouldn't be trying to rush everything. Persistence. Come on, my build. You can do it. So it's still doing its thing. It's a case of hurry up and wait, isn't it? How is everyone today? Hopefully good. Let's look through the other tabs. I mean, there's nothing here to display. That's rather dull, isn't it? We'll have some more things in a moment, I think. Ooh, Azure Disk. That's good. Roles. Our cluster role. Yeah. I think, is this the role that we created earlier on when we ran that command? No, it's not. No. Right. Pods. Come on, pods. Oh, I'm just going to skip ahead. Impatient. Yeah, we'll just cube control exec it gotta watch what you're typing. 0 namespace ignite bin bash. And then we're going to go to the following folder. Oh, I definitely don't want to type that. I'll paste this one. Okay, I'm going to paste this one as well. Oh. Well, we can now connect from an external application, apparently. As I say, I'm not sure it's 100% deployed yet, so come on, pods. Ignite 3, I think, was this not the... We just typed in Ignite 0, so I think it was... We've still got the unbound immediate persistence volume claim. Repeat 4 times. Default scheduler. We've got 2 bound, but not 4. Status running. Oh! Hurrah! Pods! Yes, this is what we wanted to see. I just needed to be more patient. Yeah, let's connect from... it says... let's connect to our Ignite cluster from an external application. That's one that's not deployed in Kubernetes. So we don't want to deploy from within Azure. We want to have something external connect to this. Now, in this case, it's using the SQL line .sh, which is something that comes with Apache Ignite. You can download that. If you go to the latest release of Apache Ignite, it's actually included in there. But we're not going to use that. We're going to use a .NET application. And that's going to be a thin client, so that you've got the, I guess they're not thick clients, are they? But you've got the lightweight connection, which is just a socket connection to your Ignite cluster. And most importantly, it doesn't start Java, so there's no JVM process. It is pure .NET. So that's pretty nice if you don't want to have the dependency. But it's not going to do any of the compute or anything on my machine. It's literally just a way to connect into that remote instance. So there is some example code here showing us what we should be doing. So I've already got a project, but let's for the interest of learning, we'll create a new one and we'll call it Ignite is amazing. And so is Azure. What a brilliant name. Even if I do say so myself. Right, so let's set that as our startup. Where are you? Set as startup project, and we want to add some NuGet packages, or just one NuGet package. And that's going to be Apache Ignite, so we'll search Apache Ignite. 2.8.0, the docs are for a slightly newer version, but we'll see what's changed. If anything, maybe nothing's changed. And we'll probably want to bring in Apache Ignite.core. Yeah, probably configuration, because we're going to configure some things, and potentially just Apache Ignite.core, maybe. This is a guess on what namespaces I may need. Obviously, you can just copy and paste bits of code here. So that's precisely what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this puppy and see what we've got. So, okay, we need core.client there. And then .cache, because we're saving some data. I'll explain what this stuff is doing in a moment. But it needs a configuration before it starts. And shall we take that? Oh. This seems to just work. Now, obviously, this is my local host. That's not the IP that we actually want. and that is deprecated. Ooh, so we should be using endpoints instead. And what is endpoints? It is... it doesn't tell us. Let's have a look at endpoints. Endpoints equals, so it's I collection of string. Okay, I can deal with that. Let's do list of string endpoints equals new list of string, and we'll add some default or a default item to that, and now we can assign that to endpoints. Not every line needs a semicolon. The IP address I copied earlier with the port number, we're going to bring that in. Wow. I don't think I need the HTTP bit on the front. I think it's just inferred, and we are going to update this as well because at the moment it's so. Let me just walk through what this is doing. We certainly don't need that. Oh no, we don't need that. So we create our list of endpoints that we're going to connect to for our client configuration, and then we create or we start the client, which is going to effectively open up a socket to our endpoint, and then it's going to try and create a cache, which is that distributed data storage, so in-memory data storage. But it's actually going to get a cache. Now, if that cache doesn't exist, this is going to throw an exception. Because there's nothing already in there, because it's a brand new deployment, I'm going to change this to get or create cache. So that way, if it's not there, it will create it and it won't fail. We'll then put in hello world with an ID of 1. So we put in, maybe we have our key and then our value, which is based on the parameters that we supply here. Let's do console write line saved to Ignite. If it crashes, we're just gonna assume that none of this will ever crash, so we're not going to put any try catch or anything like that. But what we'll also do is then say console.write line client get. Oh no, we want to do. Do I have an instance of the cache? I do. That's what I actually want to have. Cache.get, and we'll pass in our ID, which we set here. So we're going to print out whatever we save into the database. Now keep in mind that the data isn't being stored locally within this client. We didn't actually need configuration. Look at that. The data is being stored in Kubernetes, and then we're just fetching that down. So let's see if that runs. Does it run? Does it work? Hello world. That worked. That's amazing. So in less than an hour, we've gone from deploying AKS. We've configured Apache Ignite and deployed that to 4 pods. Obviously, we could scale that to be much bigger if we needed to. And then we've written a tiny little application with .NET using the NuGet package that's available from Apache Ignite. It's a .NET Core application as well, so this should work anywhere. In fact, I could get it running on the little Meadow thing that I was talking about earlier, that tiny little IoT device if I wanted. And we were able to connect up to that and put some data into the in-memory data grid and then pull that data back out. So I would say this documentation is amazing. This is fantastic documentation. So really well done, Dennis, on that. The only issue I had was having to do this create cluster role binding earlier on, which I've made a note of, and I'll be passing that back to Dennis, and hopefully we can see if it's me being an idiot or if it needs the documentation updating. So I'm actually going to end the stream 10 minutes early because we're done. There's not much more to this. If you're interested in learning more about AKS in particular, let me see if we have any decent content on that. Yeah, we do. Look at this. AKS. Azure Kubernetes Service. So we got some quick starts. What I was really looking for was, the Microsoft Learn stuff. So Microsoft Learn is our interactive learning environment. So you can learn about containers. You can bring up the CLI on the side here. So if you don't have an Azure account and you want to play with some of the Azure features, you can do that entirely for free with Microsoft Learn. And there's a whole host of content on here. So let's search AKS directly and see nothing. Okay, but there is stuff on containers. So if you just want to learn general containers, then this might be a good place to go. I think we should probably get some content up on here that is focused on AKS. That's a good thing for me to consider in the future. But with that, I appreciate you watching. I hope this has been useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you want to contact me directly, ping me on Twitter, mikecodes.net, pretty easy to remember. And I'm always happy to take feedback about what you want to hear in the future, what you're interested in. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.